everyone. Sit back, relax, and let's start our podcast about environment and environmental issues. My name is Nare. I'm the host of this podcast with my friend David.
So, welcome to the first Planet One podcast. And our today's guests are Barbara from Kenya, Nairobi, and Irok from Johannesburg, South Africa. We are very pleased to see you here. So, the can you introduce yourself?
In my country, they'll always say ladies first.
Well, being the lady, I will go first. My name is Barbara, and I am glad to be here as part of this podcast and just share insights on what the environment means. And over to you.
Greetings to everyone. My name is Irok, and just as friend David has said, that I'm from Johannesburg. Yep, I'm from Johannesburg, South Africa. I'm also a podcaster myself, and the name of the podcast is the Irok Podcast, meaning the intellectual relations of consciousness, where we try to merge the social issues with climate and environmental justice. So yeah.
Damn, that's cool. And how you started all this journey? Can you tell us about the first steps in your career?
Of starting a podcast.
Yeah.
So I think for everyone starting a podcast, basically, the real question you need to be asking yourself is, do you want to be a podcaster? Do you want to be a YouTuber? Do you want to be a content creator? Because it's a very demanding job, more especially when you're starting, because high possibilities is you're going to be doing content creation, videos, and sound editing by yourself. So it's very difficult. But otherwise, if you have like a backup of some sort, then do it.
Yeah, and you got a cool voice for the podcast, I see.
Appreciate it.
And by the way, Barbara, have you ever thought about creating your own podcast or participating in one?
Well, I definitely have thought about starting one like a million times. In fact, last year I came up with a whole plan to start a podcast, and now I just look at it and I'm like, okay.
What was the topic
Mhm.
that you were planning to do in your podcast?
Well, so my idea was just to share perspectives, basically, like perspectives of young people, just like getting into their heads and just seeing what it's like, being behind the lens of what another person would see, and just on the topics that affect young people that are often like ignored. Yeah, just like, how do you feel and how are you today and what do you really like, and yeah.
Oh, it's fun actually. So firstly, I want to talk about podcasts in generally.
Yeah.
Like the podcasts in Armenia are very rare, and it's a new industry in Armenia. So we are hoping to promote this industry. Podcasts are basically very useful because many people in our world don't have time or resources required to do research on certain topics. So podcasts give us opportunity to to view different topics from different perspectives, different angles. And for example, if you watch a podcast on a specific topic and you don't like it, you can find another one on that same topic and watch it. So these are generally, I talked about podcasts. And today's podcast is about the environment, and David will introduce us the first question.
So, first of all, I want to ask you, what do you think? Is there a cultural feature in your country that affects on the environmental issues? Like, do you think that your culture, that your ethnic, special, cultural differences are they affecting the situation from your point of view, Barbara?
Well, I'd like to answer that question from a different angle and just maybe bring our understanding on what the environment is. And just until now, I've just thought about it. And in most cases, we like to define the environment as the things around us, but we don't look at it from the perspective that we are actually the environment, because in one way or another, it shapes us and we shape it. So we are not just interdependent, but interlinked. Like, I define my environment, and in return, it shapes me. So in terms of the cultural aspect, I would say in my country, in the local communities, there's always been that respect for the environment, because we believe that if the environment is destroyed, then we do not have a good life. So there's always that culture of, as much as we want to have fun and live our lives, there's that respect that we give to the environment, that we have to make it, ensure that it's clean. There are things that from the local community that would not be accepted, like littering, throwing things in the river that people get their drinking water from. So definitely there are aspects that exist that would make affect the environment. In terms of you'd find there are communities that would have conflicts because of certain resources that will come from the environment. But those are aspects that we would say have come as a result of things beyond them. Because for example, for pastoralist communities, they depend on pasture, and that is nature. For fishing communities, they depend on the water, and they would seek to protect such aspects even with their lives.
Yeah, this is a good position, but I wanted to ask, are all the members of society agree with these methods and ideas? Do everyone appreciate the environment for its resources and opportunities?
Well, I'd say for the most part. However, we've seen how capitalism has affected us all in one way or another. And for people who come from a certain place, they would connect more to it and would seek to protect it. But for people who, for example, you'd find people who just migrate to, for example, most cities, and they wouldn't care so much because they have no relationship whatsoever with that place, because they know that at any time I could actually leave and just go back home, which I relate to more. So you'd find that in such cases, most people would actually not take so much care of spaces that they don't call home, and they wouldn't mind about the kind of damage that they do to such places.
Yeah, it's actually, I was very shocked when Russians that came to Armenia were cleaning space in Armenia. So I thought that Armenians would definitely not do that for another country. So I think it's now this issue is improving. We can get to that point where everyone cares not about only their country, but about our planet, because this planet is all we got.
True. But I actually wanted to ask Barbara. Not sure if you guys knew, and I'm not actually even much sure if this is true, that in Africa there's a city in Kenya called Nairobi. And is Nairobi the cleanest city in Africa?
Well, no.
Not really?
Not really. There are other cleaner places. I'd say Nakuru is actually the cleanest town in Kenya.
Nakuru.
Yeah, Nakuru. I think Kigali in Rwanda is also one of the cleanest cities.
Yeah.
They even have a cleaning day where everyone, including the president, cleans.
Oh no,
Yeah.
nice.
It's nice.
Because I mean, we all coming from different places, right?
Yeah.
And for different people, cleanliness means something totally different. When we were here in Stockholm, I was taking a walk and it's like freezing cold, you know. Shockingly, you wouldn't see this like in many parts or cities of the world. A man was just going around carrying like a banana peeler, looking for like a bin where he could just like throw it off, you know. And I think
And not just the regular bean, but the bean for organic,
Yeah,
exactly,
yeah.
you know, so not like really like most people, when you go around, you find such, but you start to appreciate when you come into cities where like cleanliness is like the next like biggest thing for them. Yeah.
Yeah, right. In Armenia, we got such situation that our capital city is, let's say, not the cleanest city, but when we go to the other regions of Armenia or cities or towns, we see that people who live there, they are carrying out all the trash. They are thinking about the clean cities. Like our let's say second capital, the cultural capital, as we say, Gyumri. You can't find any kind of trash there, on streets and even near the houses. They are trying to keep it as clean as possible because they love their city. So, but I think that the centers and megapolises like New York, Moscow, or let's say Berlin, they they can be clean like other small cities. Even the Stockholm it has not like 1 million population, and I think that's the main idea. When you got too big population in one city, you can get can't rid out of trash. So what do you think about it? Can we somehow develop an idea that big cities should be clean too?
Yeah, I think from a South African perspective, cities can be clean if citizens decide to clean, right? If citizens decide that we are going to be the ones who are going to take care of like our city, then the city can be clean, right? If the government decides to put laws into places where proper punishment goes into those that do not look after the city, then everyone will have no choice but to be a compliant citizen when it comes to rules and regulations placed under like cleanliness and like collection of trash.
Yeah, so we had a like debate yesterday, and we were talking about that the government should increase the price, like if someone pollutes the area. So some of people think that it's not like right. There are other methods of payment, like not only money. So, what do you think? What other methods can the governments use to to like decrease the amount of people who don't who like just throw trash on the streets and say I don't care, like it's not doing any harm if one person like throws a paper.
To be honest, I think affirmative action is good. Policies are very, very good. But like we've all said from before, and I think all of us have had the statement that goes, littering is a character issue. And there's so many, as much as there's so many policies, there's so many laws, it would take for someone to know for them not to do it. So I think at first it should begin from a personal level. It's a character issue first. I mean, we've seen so many antelopes and so many wildebeests, but I mean, they don't have an issue with so much poop waste. I mean, nature will always balance itself out, but at the end of the day, it's our character. Our character would still affect how the environment would look like in the end, because then I shouldn't. It's like how COVID came, and some people would wear masks just because the government. I'd get arrested or something, and not because I want to protect not just myself, but the people I love. So when you start to look at it from that perspective, that I'm not doing it because there's a rule that says, but I'm doing it because if I don't put this plastic in the right place, then the microplastics are also going to end up in the same water that I could drink. If the plastic gets burned, it's going to affect the same air that I inhale. So I think, first of all, the first way is changing people's mindsets. That is one. And then two, then we can talk about, before we get to affirmative action, what systems do we have to actually help people to do that? Because sometimes we just don't segregate because the systems don't support it. And then we can go to, if you do not do this, you're going to pay a fine or you're going to get arrested.
Makes sense.
And I wanted just to ask you something. I know that Africa statistically creates most of the world's physical trash, like plastics and stuff. Can you please tell me your opinion why it is like that? Why Africa creates so much trash? Is there something with, I don't know, the development problems or environmental issues?
Well, I think I'll answer just a bit of the question and then pass it on to Irok. I think 2 years back, there was an expose on the American chemicals something, an industry. And what they were doing is actually pushing plastics to Africa. And this is how it's happening in terms of products, in terms of things. It comes, at first you might not know how it's happening because actually Africa is one of the least, the whole of Africa, not just one country, the least emitters in terms of anything. All the global emissions, we are less than 5%. So in terms of producing, we don't do most of the production. But what happens is all these products that are wrapped in plastics get, because of globalization, the beautiful word that made the world a global village, all these things find their way in Africa. And because we do not have the systems to handle all that waste, to recycle, to make sure that it doesn't end up in the environment, it does. Because I'd say a long time ago, we had circular systems, even from where I come from, until the plastics came in. I mean, we'd throw our waste. We had small gardens. You finish eating, you put it in the right bin until plastics came, and we realized it just doesn't go away. And the only way it can disappear is if we burn it, which just releases it into the air. So,
you know what Barbra is saying can provoke people's emotions and thoughts, because these are conversations that you need to have them, and don't be considerate of like feelings, because once we put feelings into it, then it does no longer serve the purpose of the conversation. Personally, with what she is saying, everything in terms of like environmental justice that affects Africa isn't from Africa. If we're talking about pollution, Africa emits less carbon emissions, and the side effects of that is when the entire world produces more, the countries or the continent that gets hit the most by the side effects of climate change is Africa. Looking in terms of like where most of the floods are happening, it's Africa. Where most of like cyclones are hitting, it's Africa. Where most of the droughts are hitting, it's Africa. You know, so same thing applies to like plastics, right? As Africa, we are not as yet much developed than other countries.
Yeah.
You know, or even other continents. You know, we are not as much developed. So if we look in terms of like the pace that we are setting compared to the pace that other continents are setting in terms of plastic pollutions, we are left behind. So it would not really be a good fact if one was to say, or an opinion, in terms of like Africa being like the one that contributes the most, or because the truth of the matter is Western countries do ship their trash into Africa, with the aim of Africans are the ones who are going to do the tough labor on it.
Why the government approves that, like,
Yeah.
some trash is just in your country? Is it because like they get paid or something? What do you think about this?
Oh, do you know the saying that says one man's trash is another man's treasure?
Yeah, yeah.
It's something like that. But remember that we are speaking post the scramble of Africa.
Yeah.
So what we are currently experiencing, all of us sitting here, we are having effects of like what that did to us. So when the scramble of Africa was happening, basically Africa to Europe became something like a trash can.
Yeah.
And most of like the plastics or like the trash was shipped prior, to like the 20th century. So what we are even solving right now, it's like a situation that did not start even in this century. So we are solving like a like long pre-existing like problem to this solution. So it wasn't a matter of like payment being made, but right now when we are coming into like the globalization of like countries and how we are now like seeking for peace and love and we are spreading love, now that's when we are like there's funds that go into Africa being paid for the damages that have been caused, and not by Africa nor African countries nor African leaders. That is why probably maybe it's something that they are supposed to discuss in the United Nations climate conference, but it's not happening like that. And I think this podcast, and by the way, congratulations on starting it, because I think we are going to
Thanks.
discuss more of these issues. I guess you're going to discuss more of these issues, and to the rest of the youth watching and listening to this, it's going to be educational.
We
for
are
them.
very grateful for this opportunity. So I want to ask, you mentioned. Okay, do you want
Before you
to?
ask, I just wanted to ask. I just wanted to mention something. It's like there's some kind of strange cycle or paradox. Like European companies are getting the resources from Africa. They are creating some kind of a product. Like they use that product, and then they just send their trash to your countries. It's not. It's kind of like it's sad. Like
It's a closed circle, like it's repeating itself. I think in this, in Swedish Norse mythology, it is there is a snake that eats his eats himself over and over, and it's like that snake.
Yeah, basically, it goes even further beyond that. In the city where I come from, it is the only city in the world that was built without consideration of like where water can be accessed, like building a city without thinking where people in the city are going to access that. And then I think it's episode 4, episode 5, where I was with a photographer named Dalen Paul, and we were just discussing that, amongst like other situations. So what I wanted to bring with that is gold gets mined in Johannesburg, and then it gets like to Europe, where it gets processed and all, and then it goes back to Africa, and it's like 3-4 times the value of what it was when it was a raw material. So even economy wise, we are not on the good side of it. In terms of like climate and environmental, we are still not on the good side of it.
No.
Yeah.
So do you think like this issue can be tackled through like if schools instill the values of like this kind of issues, like how to solve them to children, like from young age? schools try to have some courses, some lessons, so the future generations will be aware of these problems. They will make it work, like have some so if our future generations will be aware of this problem, I think it will get better. Like what?
Implementing the environmental issues in education is, I think, a good idea, but is it worth it, like in Africa, since people see it every day, by the way, I think?
Well, what's good about traveling the world was I got to experience Fridays are for the Future. And seeing like literally teenagers taking the international climate issues into their own hands is what we need more, and spreading the message whilst having fun. It's what the youth really wants. So it doesn't just end there, because if Fridays for the Future was started by teenagers, and now you getting like even people who are like older, and coming into this, it just proves that it doesn't need to be a conversation that only happens in schools. It needs to be conversations that happens in homes.
So public awareness campaign.
Not just campaigns. It needs to be everywhere. Like, you need to turn on the TV and hear climate change. You need to turn on the radio and hear climate change. You need to turn on your cell phones and hear climate change. Because climate change, it's not something that is about to happen. It is something that it is happening and we are living in it. Barbra, what do you think?
Well, I want to say something very controversial, so be ready.
Okay, that's interesting.
So, well, climate has been changing. It has been changing the whole time, but it's just not been happening that fast enough. And in one way or another, we still had the solutions from our communities, from your local environment. You had the solutions. And it's funny how right now it's coming as something we have to force into the education system. And why? Because, well, in the past, all this knowledge was passed down to generations. What your parents know right now, someone told them what to do. And then schools came in, which is good. I mean, now we know about astrophysics and chemistry and nice things, and how we can revolutionize technology and all that. But there's something that's missing, because the curriculum is different right now. I mean, look at schools right now. Children are in a concrete building from, I don't know, Monday to Friday. So the time that they get to spend with nature is actually reduced. The time that they get to spend with... I remember when I was in my primary school, the only time I got out was at the time that we had physical education, and by the time I was getting to higher, like primary school, it wasn't there anymore. So I was in a concrete building from Monday to Sunday.
6 to 7 hours.
Yes. So you can imagine. So yes, even if we're introducing it into we're just forcing it into the curriculum, because there's no way in which that form of knowledge is being passed down. So even as we're trying to do that, there has to be that connection with nature. I have to understand the impacts of pollution. I have to understand what nature looks like, or else we'll have kids who just see forests in books.
So you're suggesting that these courses should be implemented like in forests or some kind of places that are directly connected with nature, so children can see that that something bad will happen if they don't care about nature.
Well, I think what I'm trying to say is the time that these kids would spend more with their parents has been taken by the education system, which in fact makes it right for us to push for environmental knowledge to be climate education to be put into the curriculum. But how practical is it? Like, there's no practicality in it. If I am going to experience after I leave school, then I'm like, it's all hitting me at once.
I think, just in addition, if you're gonna talk about Africa and the education system, it's also very important that you mention infrastructure that goes into place, because for the teacher and learner guide, you need proper infrastructure to go into it. So if you need it to be much more practical, rather, the infrastructure needs to be there to support that type of education. So it's not just one problem you really need to solve, and that's why I think that before we talk about environmental issues, social injustice issues need to be tackled, and we need to come into contact with that. Yeah.
Yeah. From my perspective, I think it should not be only implemented in schools. I think that parents and families should understand that they supposed to describe their children how the environment and the production of products work. Like in my country, in my society, there is a problem that new generation of parents don't know how the system works, and their kids don't even know how the potatoes or tomatoes are growing up. They think they are coming up from trees, or even worse, from supermarkets, and that's a really big challenge for all of us. So don't you think that it's not only a problem of government, that's a problem of whole society?
Yeah, true. Hence I said, to solve and eradicate this, you need to have more billboards when you are driving to, from, work, shop, malls, everywhere. You need it to be there. During like some wars that were happening, you would get a God bless America huge logo in highways, when the world was for South Africa, and like South Africans experiencing oppression, every European station was talking about that. When Zimbabwe was going through sanctions, every TV station was talking about that, and how Robert Mugabe really isn't good, and reasons why Zimbabwe had to like go through all those sanctions. When China was like being hit, due to like this catastrophe of the climate crisis, the entire world, like, it was there. But right now, I'm not sure who is really the one who's supposed to put the message out there. And this is why we are now moving into podcasts, because in mainstream media or in television, radios, the message is not there anymore. And that's how information used to be passed. So this is the new generation, and this is how we're going to do
I
it.
think media helps a lot with this issue, because like kids nowadays and even grown-ups use like media all the time. They are scrolling TikTok, Instagram, and if they see like, I know actually lots of people who were not aware of these problems, and they just got a post. They like read the description and started like being an activist who's always like post stories about this issue. So I think if we want to promote these values in 21st century, people need to like use social media, because presently it's the source that people most listen to.
And yeah, do people in your country use like internet to get more information about these issues? Like, I'm interested in Kenya. Like, how do people gain information, using books or maybe reading articles?
Well, I'd say books have become a bit rare Because, well, mostly you'd find books in library, or some of the books are just a bit expensive. Yes, there's still a way in which information gets out, but normally someone would read a book if they want to get like serious information, or if they want to like get a story out of it. So when it comes to internet, there's a lot of people and there's a lot of campaigns that have just been done online. That is in terms of disseminating the information. Another challenge that we face when it comes to the internet is there is a lot of misinformation. A lot of misinformation, and sometimes it's very bad that you'd actually even perceptions about our countries as African countries is really different in other continents, and that is how bad misinformation can be. As much as we have what most people would see, that of course there are communities with conflicts. There are parts that are not that developed, and in fact, I think the undeveloped parts are the parts that connect the best. We can get the best connections with nature, and that is what the internet has done to our face and image as Africa. But in terms of getting that knowledge, the knowledge is there. Yes, sometimes you get the knowledge, but not exactly what you want. For example, when I was looking for like information about, there's something called SBs and SPSTA. It's the subsidiary bodies and the subsidiary bodies scientific. Wow, it's a long word. So I was looking for information on that, and I could not find anything. And it's the conferences that lead up to the COP and where the agenda of the COPs are actually discussed. So yeah, sometimes it's even hard to find information on the internet, and I don't think it's because it's just in Africa. Honestly, it's just that sometimes that information is not there. Whatever you're looking for is not there, or sometimes yes, it's there, but it's shallow. So you have to do more research. Sometimes most of the information is globalized. So for you to gain like numbers that would speak to your context, you probably have to go to the ground and gain those numbers, because some of this research is done by international organizations. What else? I think I'll stop there.
Like misinformation is a global problem. When you are reading about our region or Africa, it feels like they wanted to represent our nations as hell, as the Satan's hell. I think that misinformation creates the bigger problem. Like people starting to think that everything is a lie. Like even when they talk about the global climate change, they think that's a big corporate lie, and so they are trying to describe everything like that. They are trying to say that even the big problems are just some kind of creative idea, and I think it creates bigger problem, like propaganda from the other side. The companies are using that. And do you think that it will have a bigger impact in the future?
In terms of misinformation?
In terms of global education and misinformation.
Okay. Well, I think the only problem with misinformation is how it portrays you. And if it keeps on portraying you as the victim, then people might offer the help that you do not need. So it actually takes the power away from you, the power of deciding what you actually need. And in terms of impacts, we already see the impacts of that. We've already seen communities getting aid. Like I say, teach someone how to fish, because if you give them fish, they'll need the fish. So if you teach them how to fish, then they'll speak to their need, and they'll have the power to speak to, okay, now what kind of fish do I actually need? Yeah, because if you give me fish, maybe you're giving me a tilapia and I need a shark. So I think we already start to see the impacts of that, the impacts of, a very touchy subject, but discrimination. Like someone would think you just want to steal from them because of how the movies they've watched, because of what they've seen online. So it would also impact solutions in terms of because I'm so misinformed, I will come up with solving the wrong problems because I am trying to speak to what I know and not what's actually happening. For example, the most common that I have bumped into is when people believe that carbon causes the deterioration of the ozone layer. That is the most common myth.
I
you'll
mean,
bump
there
into.
are lots of myths. I know actually, I've seen on Reddit, like some people don't believe that there is a space. They think like NASA is lying, so people don't believe now in anything. They are like, all the people have trust issues. Like, they don't even believe in like official publics, like organizations. So it's a huge issue, and I think it's because of the internet. And everyone is doing their theories. And when people found out that they believed in something that wasn't even true, they like got very insecure, and they start like not trusting people, organizations, and they just like are closed in their minds. And the only thing that they believe is like water is transparent.
Let me just ask you this about it's just an African perspective before we just close this off. And I'm not sure if it's a myth, a lie, truth, or what. Most of African countries we are pushing for renewable energy, right? And it is believed that European countries are the ones who are pushing Africa to move into the solar, the wind energy, whereas European countries are not moving into renewable energy. What do you think of that? Facts backing this up is in South Africa, in Durban, we are having a pot that constantly coal is being shipped from Africa to Europe. And whereas we as Africans are being told that Europe is, Africa rather, its coal is bad for us. So let's maybe, what do you know about that if you did know? And what do you think about it?
From my perspective, European countries sometimes are trying to they are trying to experiment with other countries so they could understand, does it worth it? Like before the implementing of solar systems in Italy, Italians they literally paid to Libya so the Libyan could try the solar system instead of other source of energy. And when the Italians saw that the systems are working correctly, they implemented them, but not as they wanted. They saw that there are some issues with the sun. If there's no sun, they can't get as much energy as they need. And so they are like, they want to protect themselves, but they don't think about any other nations. I think that's the biggest issue, they think only about their hometown, but not about the land that is near them.
About that in the beginning, like people in one country only care about that country that they live in, so it's a closed circle.
So Barbara, with that being said, do you think African countries need to shift to renewable energy?
Well, I think there's one statement that I made that was close to that, and what I said was Africa is responsible for less than 5% of global emissions. And if the whole of Africa goes renewable, the damage would only have been reduced by 95% or less. Meaning that the impact of climate change is going to still be there. The impacts of climate change are going to be there with us. And it seems like we are the most vulnerable because we also don't have the resources to also rebuild after such impacts. I mean, just look at what happened to Malawi. They haven't recovered up to right now. Even when we were doing, these things are not so far from us. When we were doing trainings at the hub, a youth group would come the next day and they'd say, so where we live, this is where and they show you videos of how it's all flooded, like where they live, it's all flooded. And you're wondering, so how do I train these young people? So sometimes, yes, there's that wide perspective that you want to give, like the whole of Africa, but also let's come down to also individuals. But anyway, let me not shift from the topic. In terms of renewable energy, let's look at it from the other perspective. Congo produces most of the metals and the elements that are used in batteries everywhere in the world. Where are they right now? I mean, they're still ravaged in conflict.
Most of them goes to private organizations. Like there are lots of resources on the earth that no one knows where they go. Like some rich countries force poor countries to like use their resources, and these resources just go nowhere. We know, like, yeah.
Yeah, so it's possible. I mean, Africa can shift. I mean, it would be good for us. We'd have cleaner air, but it won't mean that everyone has to do something. I mean, we can shift, yes, because we have the sun to support us. We have winds, we have water, we have rain in most countries. And yes, we can shift. However, what's in it for us? Because most of the minerals are actually mined in Africa to power or that are used in all these devices. So is it good? Is it going to be better for us, or is it going to put us in a place where we are more oppressed as Africans, where all the minerals are? So I think that should be the question. Is renewables are good? Yeah, we get it. Yeah, I mean, there are less emissions, but in the end, what is so okay? How where are we in the equation as the people who are oppressed the most?
So today we had really good discussion. I think we discussed many topics, like really important ones. And I wanted to say thank you for being here today with us. Thank you for helping us. And this was the first podcast from One Planet. Sorry.
Yeah. Before we closing it off, can maybe y'all just say where can people find you in terms of like social media?
Oh,
Just so that everyone who watches this video knows who you guys are and where can they find you.
okay. I think my Instagram is closed, but I think I'll open it so people will have access to me. And I think same for David, because like if someone wants to ask us some questions about this exchange program or something, how they can like I don't know, reduce the amount of carbon they use, they can they can like text me. So yeah, I'm waiting.
But it would be great if you said your social media accounts too, so people
Yeah.
would know you too.
Barbra, ladies first.
He always does that. Anyway, yeah. I am on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. On Instagram and Facebook, I am Barbra Kangwana, and on Twitter, I'm at Barbra Khatinya. Yeah, so those are my handles.
Yeah. And then for me, on Facebook and on Instagram. So Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. We have now Space, which is Twitter. It is IROCSA7. So just one word, IROCSA7. And then on YouTube, you can also subscribe, like, and share the podcast that I run, and it's called The I Rock Podcast. So it's The THE I Rock IROC Podcast PODCAST. And one last thing. People need to follow Planet One.
Yeah.
Follow Planet One on different socials, be it TikTok, be it Instagram, Planet One, and then you'll find like different from Momentum, Boiga, Mboa, Ubuntu, Ubunifo, Alternative. And yeah, that'll be it from my side.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
to the host and the co-host.
Yeah, again, thank you a lot. Thank you all. Yeah, I appreciate it. Goodbye.
Woohoo!
Bye.